everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Courtney and here we discuss true crime cases and also related psychological concepts or phenomena. In today's video we're going to be looking at the case of Kitty Genovese and also the Bystander Effect. Just a disclaimer, I am not a psychology expert, but I do have a psychology degree and I'm working towards my master's. All the information in this video has been collated from books and online research. Also, I'm sorry if I keep looking down a lot. This is my first video, so I'm a little bit nervous, and also my notes are on my lap. But anyway, let's get into this. Catherine Susan Genovese, also known as Kitty, was a 28-year-old woman living in Queens, New York in 1964. She was born in Brooklyn on the 7th of July 1935 and was the oldest of 5 children. Her parents, Rachel and Vincent, were Italian American and brought their children up in a Catholic household. Kitty attended an all-girls school and was described by teachers as self-assured and had a very happy nature. In 1954, her family moved to Connecticut, but Kitty remained in New York with her grandparents because she'd just finished high school. Kitty had many clerical jobs, but none of them really sparked her interest, so she started working at a bartender, and one of the jobs she got was at Ev's 11-hour bar, and eventually she worked her way up to being bar manager. However, she had dreams of opening an Italian restaurant, so she was just saving all of her money up for this. She was described as vivacious, a prankster, and a loving person, particularly to her family. On the 13th of March 1964, Kitty had finished her shift at the bar at around 2:30 AM and she began to drive home, and she arrived home around 3:15 AM and parked her car at a car park that was around 30 metres from her apartment. Now, to get to her apartment she had to go down an alleyway, but unknown to Kitty, a man had previously seen her at a traffic light as she was driving home and had followed her in his car, and he was now also following her down this alleyway, and he was armed with a knife. Kitty noticed this man and began to hurry to the front of the apartment buildings. However, this man was fast and was able to catch up with her, and he stabbed her twice in the back. All this commotion did alert neighbours, and one man said, "Let that girl alone," and this scared the attacker and he ran off, and Kitty tried to go to the rear of the building so she could get to her apartment. However, she was really injured at this point, and she got through one door but then wasn't able to get through another because it was locked, so she collapsed in the hallway of the building. It had been 10 minutes since witnesses and neighbours saw the man get in his car and drive away. However, he was now back, and he was wearing a hat as a disguise, and he was looking for Kitty. He looked around the car park and around the streets, and eventually he found her in this hallway of the building, and he stabbed her several more times before sexually assaulting her. He then stole $49 from her purse and left, got in his car and went. The whole attack spanned around 30 minutes from start to finish. One of Kitty's neighbours, Sophia Farah, found Kitty and held her whilst waiting for an ambulance to come. One of the neighbours had actually called a friend to ask what to do in this situation because he wasn't sure what's going on, and then that friend called another friend who then called the police, and they arrived on the scene shortly after. However, unfortunately, Kitty passed away en route to the hospital at around 4:15 AM. The next day, police set to work interviewing witnesses, such as the neighbours, and Kitty's girlfriend, whom she was living with at the time. Her name was Mary Zilonko. She was heavily interrogated by police only a few hours after Kitty had died, and their line of questioning was very weird. It started to really get into their sex life and their relationship, and the police at this point actually thought Mary was a suspect in this murder. However, After interviewing the neighbours, the police realised it was a man that had committed this crime. They didn't get much from neighbours, just that he was a man, but they did get a description of his car. It was a white Chevrolet Corvair. 6 days after the murder, on the 19th of March, a man was arrested for robbing a house. He stole a TV and neighbours became suspicious, and the man that was stealing the TV claimed he was a removal guy. However, the neighbour asked other neighbours if the people in this house were moving, and they said no. So he phoned the police, and this man was arrested. Now, the arresting officer noticed the car that he was driving. It was the same car that was described by witnesses from the Kitty case. So they alerted detectives that were working on the case, and they interviewed him about Kitty. This man was called William Moseley. Now, to give a little bit of background information on him, he was 29 at the time Kitty was killed, and he was born in Queens, which was the same place where Kitty lived. He worked as a tap operator, he was married and had 3 children, and he had no criminal record at this point. During questioning, he actually just admitted to the murder of Kitty, which really stunned police. But also, another shocking claim was that he'd actually killed 2 other women, and he was also admitting to those. The first being Annie Johnson, who was found shot and burnt just a few weeks before Kitty was killed. And the second was Barbara Kralik, who had been killed the previous July. When asked why he killed Kitty, he said his motive was to kill a woman. And he said he targeted women because they were easier and they didn't fight back. On that night, he left his home at 2 a.m. looking for a victim. And he saw Kitty at the traffic light and decided that she would be the woman that he would kill. A psychiatric assessment was later conducted, and the psychiatrist believed that he was a necrophiliac, which also might give motive to the murders. He was only charged with Kitty's murder because there was a lack of evidence at the other 2 murders, and also another man had actually already confessed to Barbara's murder. His trial began on the 8th of June 1964, and he pled not guilty despite confessing. His defence lawyer later changed this to not guilty by reason of insanity. Moseley actually testified at the court hearing, and he gave a whole testimony about how he killed these 3 women. The jury deliberated for 11 hours, and on the 11th of June, a verdict of guilty was returned. Now, this case was eligible for the death sentence, so the jury then deliberated on whether they would give him the death penalty. And on the 15th of June, the jury decided that Moseley would receive the death penalty. The judge, Erwin Shapiro, said, "I don't believe in capital punishment, but when I see a monster, I wouldn't hesitate to pull the switch myself." In 1967, Moseley appealed his case, and the Court of Appeals found that he should have been able to argue that he was medically insane. So his sentence was reduced from the death penalty to life imprisonment. He died on the 28th of March 2016, aged 81, at the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. Now, this case became very famous after the Times published an article called "The 37 Who Saw Murder and Didn't Call the Police." This was later corrected to 38. This was taken from a comment made by the crime commissioner at the time, Michael Murphy, and it came from the fact that it was stated that 38 of Kitty's neighbours had heard something or seen something and just didn't report it. At the time, this really shook the public, because if you heard or saw a woman in distress, why would you not call the police or go check or do something? This inspired a line of psychological research within the social field, and it led to the development of what we now know is the bystander effect. So we're now going to look at the bystander effect. What is it? So the bystander effect is the theory or idea that the more people are around, the less likely we are to help. Therefore, as the number of bystanders increases, the less likely it is that we will step in and respond. This can be due to a number of factors. This line of research was founded by John Darley and Birbalatany. In the first experiment in 1964, just a few months after Kitty's murder, participants were told that they would be having discussions about personal issues with other people. There were a number of conditions in which participants either spoke to one person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, or 5 people. However, everyone would be in separate rooms, so you wouldn't be able to see each other. They communicated via microphones and speakers. Each participant would have 2 minutes to speak about their issue, and they would take turns doing this. However, what the participants didn't know was there weren't any other people. These were actually pre-recorded voices that they were hearing. So they were the only real person in the experiment. And one of these voices spoke about their personal issue, which was their struggle with epilepsy. So during the first turn, their first 2 minutes, they spoke about this struggle. However, in the second turn that they took, they appeared to have a seizure. They said things like, "I'm having a fit, I can't breathe, I'm going to die." Now, the experimenters wanted to see if people would go and look for help, and how long it took them to go and find help. So remember, participants can't see anything that's happening, and they can just hear it. So the results of this experiment are very interesting. Only 35% of all participants went to look for help, to find an experimenter to help this person having a fit. The group that responded the most were the people in the 1-to-1 condition. So it was them and the person having the fit. 85% of people in this condition went to look for help. However, as the number of people increased in the groups, less people went to look for help. Now, the experimenters wanted to look at the reasons why, and they came up with 2 ideas. Number 1, the diffusion of responsibility. This is the idea that the participants thought that one of the other people would ask for help. Because there are more people, they're less responsible. So they feel less personally responsible for the situation, so are less likely to respond. The second is pluralistic ignorance. Now, this is the idea of false impressions that are believed by everyone. If none of the other people are treating it as an emergency, why would you? You follow this new false norm and don't respond because no one else is. For example, if a fire alarm went off in a building and no one else made a move to leave, you probably wouldn't either, because no one else is taking it as an emergency, so you just follow their behaviour. Now, there are many other factors that can also influence the bystander effects, and I'll hopefully go into these in another video. But I hope you enjoyed this short introduction to the bystander effects, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!